Imagine the scene. The phone rings in the middle of the afternoon. A tearful voice on the other end introduces itself as your son or grandson, desperate, saying that he has had an accident or that he is being held captive. The tears in the voice sound real, the heavy breathing conveys panic, and the words ask for just one thing: send a money transfer now or something worse will happen. For any elderly person living alone, this is the kind of call that makes the heart race, triggers the protective instinct, and drives the hand straight to the cell phone or banking app. But what many still do not know is that this scene does not involve their real relative. It is artificial intelligence acting as an accomplice to criminals, cloning voices to simulate urgent situations. The scam no longer begins with cold written messages. It now arrives loaded with emotion, because the criminals have understood that despair is the key to stealing what took you a lifetime to achieve. This is the new risk scenario that elderly people face in 2025, an era in which technology, which should protect and bring people closer together, is being used against those who trust. Recent statistics from the banking sector show that digital crimes targeting people over 60 years old have increased at an accelerated pace, and in many cases, the scam is completed in less than 10 minutes. What is lost is not only money, but also peace of mind, trust, and often the sense of dignity. The opening of this script serves as a warning. If you receive a call from someone asking for a transfer, even if the voice sounds identical to that of a relative, doubt can save your retirement. Taking a deep breath, being suspicious, and applying simple shielding protocols is the only way to turn the game around. Voice cloning scams with instant transfers are like a car accident happening inside your home, because they occur unexpectedly, silently, and quickly. But just like on the road, there are rules, precautions, and barriers that drastically reduce the risk of becoming a victim. This introduction needs to awaken in you the awareness that the threat is real, that the enemy is no longer just the armed robber on the street, but also the anonymous call that comes through your landline or cell phone. It is not about fear, but about preparation. After all, the criminal's technology may be advanced, but your calmness, your method, and your practical knowledge will always be stronger weapons. This script is your guide to understanding, step by step, how to shield yourself and avoid falling for scams that exploit what is most human in you, the love for your family. Voice cloning with artificial intelligence is one of the most unsettling phenomena of the digital age, because it transforms just a few seconds of audio into a tool capable of deceiving even the most attentive ears. In practice, all a criminal needs is access to a short recording of your voice. It could be an audio sent via a messaging app, a video posted on a social network, or even an intercepted call. For advanced artificial intelligence programs to replicate that voice with frightening similarity. These softwares are trained to imitate tone, inflection, and even breathing pauses, creating a digital copy that says whatever the criminal wants. This way, the scammer no longer needs to invent complicated excuses. He just makes the machine repeat emotional phrases like, "Mom, help me, I am in danger," and the victim instantly believes it. The most dangerous detail is that in moments of panic, the human brain does not analyze logically. It simply reacts emotionally. When hearing the voice of a child or grandchild in distress, the elderly person does not think about checking authenticity, but instead about solving the problem as quickly as possible. That is where criminals find room to act. They exploit the instinct for family protection, which is immediate and unquestionable. This psychological manipulation is what makes voice cloning so effective. And since artificial intelligence technologies have become more accessible, it is no longer necessary to be a high-level hacker. Anyone with a simple computer can access free or low-cost programs capable of cloning voices in minutes. However, no matter how realistic it may sound, cloning still leaves traces of falsification, and learning to identify them may be the key to escaping the scam. The first sign is the lack of context. The voice generally repeats short phrases without being able to sustain a long conversation. The second clue is breathing, which often sounds artificial, as if pasted into the audio, lacking natural flow. Another point is the exaggerated emotional tone, forced crying, monotonous screaming, continuous desperation without normal pauses in speech. Furthermore, when the call drags on, the criminal usually avoids direct questions, preferring to keep the victim under emotional pressure so that they do not have time to think. Recognizing these patterns is like spotting a crack of light in the middle of a trap. It is the moment when the victim gains time and can activate the shielding protocol. It is also worth noting that criminals choose strategic times to call, usually in the late afternoon or evening, when people are more tired and less critical. They also use background noises, such as car sounds or voices, to reinforce the sense of urgency. All of this is carefully calculated to reduce the victim's ability to reason. But technology is not invincible. A simple family code word, a call back to the official number, or even a few seconds of calmness can dismantle the act. The central point is never to forget that artificial intelligence can imitate the voice of someone you love, but it cannot reproduce memories, intimate details, and personal codes. And it is in those details where your defense lies. In 2025, the advancement of technology has brought new conveniences to everyday life, but it has also opened a dangerous range of opportunities for digital criminals. The elderly, in particular, have become recurring targets because they combine two factors. They usually have a certain degree of financial stability, the result of pensions, retirement benefits, or savings. And at the same time, they do not always master digital tools with the same agility as younger generations. This combination creates the perfect scenario for scammers, who no longer rely only on malice. They use artificial intelligence, social networks, and messaging apps as sophisticated weapons to steal silently, exploiting emotional vulnerabilities and gaps in technological knowledge. Among all the methods, some stand out due to their frequency and effectiveness, and are now considered the most common scams against the elderly in Brazil. The first of these is the us-cloned voice scam, which has already been presented but deserves to be highlighted for its devastating impact. It is a fraud that mixes cutting-edge technology with emotional manipulation, becoming practically a criminal performance. The elderly person receives the call, hears the voice of a relative in despair, and, driven by the instinct to protect, transfers money via instant payment. This scam works because it creates the sensation of maximum urgency, eliminating any chance for reflection. It is a clear example of how artificial intelligence has been incorporated into the arsenal of digital crime. Another very common scam is the cloned WhatsApp account. In this case, criminals manage to invade the victim's app account, usually through fake links or social engineering, and then begin communicating with the victim's contacts, asking for money. For family members, the message seems legitimate. After all, it comes from the victim's real number. Many elderly people fall for this when they receive requests from friends or relatives asking for money to solve something urgent. Trust in the tool, combined with lack of attention to details such as the tone of the conversation or the type of request, makes many transfer money without hesitation. There is also the fake bank employee scam, an old practice that has taken on new forms with digital advances. Criminals call posing as financial institution employees, often using real bank names and even cloned phone numbers to look official. They inform the elderly that there are security issues with their account and request the installation of an app that supposedly increases protection, but in reality is spyware that gives remote access to the phone. From there, the criminals can freely move money without the victim noticing. A fourth scam on the rise in 2025 is the PAMESCAS fake app update scam, which mainly affects elderly people who are not used to checking the authenticity of links and messages. The criminal sends a notice saying that it is necessary to update the banking app, a government app, or even WhatsApp, but the link leads to a fake website. When the victim downloads the file, they install malware that collects passwords, accesses conversations, and enables fraudulent financial transactions. Finally, we cannot ignore the miracle investment scams, which now include videos manipulated by artificial intelligence. It is increasingly common to see on social networks videos that look authentic, featuring celebrities or well-known figures recommending a financial opportunity with absurd returns. Many elderly people, who trust the public image of these figures, end up believing and transferring money to non-existent platforms or pyramid schemes. These scams take advantage of credibility and emotion, promising quick, infallible results in exchange for little investment. What all these scams have in common is urgency. Criminals pressure the victim to make quick decisions without time to reflect. They know that the greatest defense of any elderly person is time. Time to think, call someone trustworthy, or check information. That is why the standard tactic is always to create a sense of urgency, whether it be a fake kidnapping, a bank account block, a limited time offer, or an invented illness. Recognizing this pattern of act now or lose everything is one of the first protective filters any elderly person must apply, because in digital security, anything that demands too much rush deserves immediate suspicion. Defense against digital scams does not depend on advanced technological knowledge, but rather on discipline in following a few simple steps that act as a shield. These 5 steps form what is called practical shielding, a protection routine that any elderly person can apply at home, even without great familiarity with cell phones or computers. It is important to emphasize that, just as we use a seatbelt in traffic as a precaution, these steps must always be applied, even when the situation seems harmless. They drastically reduce the risk of losing money, increase confidence in dealing with technology, and create a mental protocol that helps maintain calm even when faced with suspicious calls. The 21st step is never to trust emotional calls without confirmation. This is the starting point because most scams exploit desperation. When someone calls crying, asking for money, or reporting an accident, the natural impulse is to help without thinking. But the rule is clear. Do not transfer anything until you confirm through other means. This initial suspicion is not coldness, it is protection. If the call is real, the person will indeed have to wait a few minutes while you confirm. And if it is false, that time will be enough to dismantle the scam. The second step is to establish a family password. This technique is simple and powerful. Agree with your relatives on a word or expression that must always be used whenever there is an emergency call. Something only the family knows, that does not appear on social networks, and that is easy to remember. This way, when a scammer uses a cloned voice, they will not be able to respond correctly if you ask for the password. This mechanism makes voice cloning useless because artificial intelligence can imitate the sound but cannot access family intimacy. The third step is to activate two-factor authentication in all important apps, especially WhatsApp and banking apps. This feature adds an extra layer of protection, requiring a security code in addition to the normal password whenever someone tries to access your account from a new device. Many WhatsApp cloning scams only work because two-factor authentication was not enabled. Once configured, this barrier prevents criminals from invading the account and using your number to trick friends and family. The fourth step is always to hang up and call back using the saved number. This simple action cuts off most scams at the root. If someone calls asking for money, the recommendation is to immediately end the call and call back the contact saved in your phone book. If it is truly a relative in distress, you will reach them. If not, you will discover that it was a scam. This step requires courage because the emotion of the moment pressures you to stay on the call, but it is precisely hanging up that breaks the criminal's psychological control. Finally, the fifth step is to know and use the MED, the special mechanism for instant payment reversal in case you fall for a scam. MED is a tool created by the central bank to recover money transferred fraudulently. It works as an immediate report within the bank's app and can block the funds before they disappear. This step is a last resort, used when the fraud has already occurred, but it can still save part or even all of the money. Many elderly people have never heard of MED, and this lack of information is exactly what criminals exploit. Knowing that your bank has an emergency button is just as important as having the police number at hand in case of a robbery. These 5 steps are not theoretical. They are practical and applicable in daily life. Each one closes a door that criminals try to open. Emotion, identity, account invasion, telephone manipulation, and financial loss. Together, they form a shield capable of making any elderly person a much harder target. And when it comes to scams, being difficult is enough for criminals to give up and look for another path. The special reversal mechanism, known by the acronym MED, is one of the most important tools created by the central bank to protect citizens against fraud in the instant payment system. It was born in response to the alarming increase in scams involving instant transfers and works as a kind of emergency button activated directly in the bank's app that allows the blocking and possible recovery of amounts transferred improperly. Unlike other dispute systems, which can take days, MED is immediate. The faster the victim acts, the greater the chances of recovering the money. The major difficulty is that few elderly people know this resource exists, and for lack of information, they end up believing that nothing can be done after falling victim to a scam. Knowing and mastering MED is like having a fire extinguisher at home. You hope you never need it, but when the fire starts, it is the only effective way out. The functioning of MED is simple, but requires quick action. Upon realizing that they have made an instant transfer to a suspicious account, the victim must immediately open their bank's app and look for the option Report Fraud or Reversal Request via MED. This request is sent to the receiving bank, which, under central bank regulations, is obliged to block the funds while investigating the case. If fraud is confirmed, the money is returned to the defrauded customer. All of this happens within the financial system itself, without the need for intermediaries or lengthy judicial decisions. Efficiency depends on minutes. The sooner the elderly person acts, the greater the likelihood of finding the funds still in the criminal's account. It is important to highlight that MED does not guarantee 100% recovery in all cases, because criminals usually try to withdraw or transfer the money immediately after the scam. However, studies by the central bank show that up to 80% of reversal requests made within the first 24 hours manage to recover a significant portion or even the entirety of the transferred value. After that window, the chances drop considerably. This reinforces the golden rule. If you fall for a scam, do not waste time with guilt or hesitation. Activate MED without thinking twice. The step-by-step can be summarized in 3 practical stages. The first is locating the suspicious transaction inside the bank app, usually in the instant transfer history. The second is selecting the reporting option, which appears as Report Fraud, Request Reversal, or MED, depending on the institution. The third is tracking the analysis as through the app itself, which will display the status of the request and, in many cases, the partial or full return of the money. It is not necessary to go to the bank branch to activate MED, but filing a police report remains essential to strengthen the investigation and create official statistics. Another relevant detail is that MED also works in error situations, such as when the elderly send money by mistake to the wrong instant transfer key. In these cases, the mechanism can be used to request a reversal, increasing the chances of recovering the value even if there was no bad intent. This functionality further expands the importance of the tool because it covers both intentional scams and everyday mistakes. Having MED as part of your protection arsenal is essential, but it does not replace the previous shielding steps. It is the last resort, the containment plan when the scam has already taken place. Even so, the simple awareness that there is an official mechanism of defense brings peace of mind and reduces the feeling of helplessness that many victims report. Knowing that there is a legal tool recognized by the central bank that works in your favor is to transform fear into security. MED is proof that even in the face of criminals' sophistication, technology can also be on the citizen's side, as long as you know how to use it. When the phone rings and on the other end there is a desperate voice asking for help, the natural impulse is to believe, act quickly, and transfer money to try to resolve the situation. It is precisely in that fraction of a second that the criminal takes advantage. He knows that emotion cancels out reason. That is why having an anti-scam checklist is like carrying a first aid manual. It organizes the reaction, breaks psychological manipulation, and provides clarity in the moment when fear tries to take control. This checklist works as a short and objective script, which can be memorized or even printed and placed in visible spots at home, like the refrigerator door or next to the telephone. The more automatic this habit becomes, the smaller the chances of falling into the trap. The first item on the checklist is, take a deep breath and do not act on impulse. It may seem simple, but this physical act of inhaling and exhaling slowly helps the brain regain rational control. The scam is built on urgency, and every second of pause gives power back to the victim. An elderly person who takes a deep breath gains time to notice details that would otherwise go unnoticed, such as repetitive phrases, incorrect information, or artificial breathing in the cloned voice. The second item is, ask for the family password. This secret code, agreed upon with trusted relatives, works as an instant filter. If the voice on the other end cannot answer correctly, it is a clear sign of fraud. It is important that this password be exclusive, something that never appears on social networks or documents, so that only truly close family members know it. This step turns the scam into a poorly rehearsed play, because artificial intelligence may cry and plead, but it cannot access the family's intimate secrets. The third item is hang up immediately and call back using the saved number. The criminal will always try to keep the victim on the line because he knows that any interruption opens space for doubt. By hanging up and calling back the real contact, the victim breaks the manipulation and quickly discovers the truth. This action requires courage, but it is one of the most effective ways to dismantle voice cloning or fake kidnapping scams. The fourth item is never make an instant transfer without talking to another trusted family member. Establishing this golden rule at home is fundamental. No transfer should be made before a second confirmation. This could mean calling a child, a sibling, or even a close neighbor. The simple act of sharing the situation with someone already reduces emotional pressure and increases the chances of identifying the scam. Finally, the fifth item on the checklist is activate MED immediately if the transfer has already been made. Many victims, after falling for a scam, go into shock and waste time blaming themselves or hesitating to ask for help. The criminal counts on this paralysis, but the correct action is to open the bank app and request the reversal via MED without thinking twice. The faster the request is made, the greater the chances of recovering the money. This anti-scam checklist should be seen as a mental shield. It is not long, it is not complicated, and it does not require advanced technological knowledge. It is just a simple script, but if followed, it can save years of savings and protect the peace of mind of an entire family. Memorizing these 5 steps means transforming vulnerability into strength, and every elderly person who applies this protocol becomes a much harder target for criminals. After escaping or even falling for a scam, one of the most important steps is not to remain silent. Reporting is not only about trying to recover the lost money, but also about creating official statistics, strengthening investigations, and making it harder for criminal groups to operate. Many elderly people, out of shame or fear of criticism, fail to file a report, and this only favors criminals who continue acting without leaving traces. Reporting is, therefore, a fundamental part of shielding, because it turns every fraud attempt into a useful lead for the authorities. The quicker and more formal the record is made, the greater the chances of interrupting the cycle of scams. The first channel to be activated is the Pune Civil Police, through the registration of a police report. This document formalizes the scam and serves as the basis for investigations. In many regions, it is already possible to file the report electronically through the virtual police station without having to leave home. For elderly people, this convenience is essential, as it reduces bureaucracy and speeds up the process. The report must contain as many details as possible: the phone number that made the call, amounts transferred, screenshots of conversations, times, and even fake names used by the scammers. The more information provided, the stronger the report becomes. Another support channel is the specialized cybercrime police units, present in several capitals. These divisions have professionals trained to handle digital fraud, track bank accounts, and identify scam patterns. Whenever possible, filing the case directly at these units increases the chances of a deeper investigation. For elderly victims, it may be useful to rely on younger family members to help collect evidence and contact these offices. In addition to the police, there is the central bank and financial institutions. Whenever there is fraud involving instant transfers, it is mandatory to notify the bank immediately, both to activate the reversal mechanism, MED, and to open internal security protocols. Every complaint recorded generates reports that the central bank uses to monitor suspicious accounts and penalize institutions that do not comply. It is worth remembering that banks are responsible for following strict security standards, and customer pressure through official complaints is what ensures these rules work in practice. The ANTU Consumer Protection Agency, PROCON, is another essential channel, especially when there are signs of negligence by the financial institution. Many cases involving elderly victims of scams have been resolved after formal complaints, which forced banks to review processes or refund amounts. PROCON acts as a mediator between the consumer and the company, pressing for quick solutions. To file a complaint, one can access the official website or look for the nearest service office. Finally, there are also fraud and fake news verification portals, maintained both by public agencies and independent organizations. These websites gather information on circulating scams and help the public identify suspicious messages before they cause damage. Sharing with family members the habit of checking these portals is a practical way of building a collective protection network where each person helps warn the other. Seeking help and reporting is not a sign of weakness, but of awareness and responsibility. Every police report filed, every protocol opened at the bank, and every complaint made to Procon represents a brick in the wall that makes life harder for criminals. Elderly people who adopt this stance not only defend themselves but also protect the entire community. Digital scams thrive in silence. When the victim speaks out, reports, and acts, fraud loses strength. We now reach the final moment of this script, and here it is important to turn all the information into practical action. What we have seen so far is that digital scams in 2025 are no longer amateurish. They use artificial intelligence, exploit emotions, and directly target the elderly, who often answer a call believing the voice on the other end belongs to a son, grandson, or close relative. But we have also seen that shielding exists, that the protocols are simple, and that anyone can turn fear into method. The message that needs to remain engraved is clear. Fear and haste are the criminal's weapons, while calm and method are the victim's weapons. Breathing, doubting, confirming, and acting correctly is what separates a successful fraud from a frustrated attempt. That is why it is crucial to adopt the use anti-scam script as a routine. This quick response script must always be at hand, not only as a mental reminder, but also written down and placed in visible places at home. Imagine the scene. The phone rings, you recall the 5 steps, take a deep breath, ask for the password, hang up to call back, consult a family member, and if necessary, activate MED. This chain of actions is simple but creates a wall against criminals. It is not only about protecting money, but also about protecting your peace of mind and your family's safety. The great difference of this script is showing that the power of defense lies in the victim themselves. It is not necessary to be a technology expert or to depend exclusively on the police or banks. What frightens criminals the most is not the technology against them, but the elderly person who is prepared, who knows how to react, who does not panic, and who turns calmness into a shield. That elderly person ceases to be an easy target and becomes someone scammers avoid because they know they will not be able to manipulate them. The closing must also leave a phrase that echoes, one that can be repeated as a constant reminder. If you hear a voice asking for an instant transfer, doubt first, confirm later, and only trust with proof. This sentence summarizes the essence of what has been presented and can be repeated within the family to create a collective protection habit. After all, digital scams do not only target individuals, they attack entire households. Defense, therefore, must also be familial, shared, and reinforced daily. Concluding this script means planting a seed of vigilance. Criminals' technology will continue to evolve, but what does not change is the power of the person on the other end of the line, you. Shielding is not made of complicated passwords or complex systems, but of calmness, method, and discipline. If every elderly person adopts the anti-scam script, not only will they protect themselves, but they will also help reduce the alarming fraud statistics that grow each month. The final message is simple and direct. Scammers use artificial intelligence, but you have something they will never have: the emotional intelligence to stay calm and follow the right method.